Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Dr. Gabe Roberts, and you are listening to the Subconscious Healer podcast, where we talk about all things related to healing in the mind body world. And the more we can understand about how our mind and body interact with one another, the better we can understand ourselves, and the better we can definitely begin to improve the results in our life, whether it's in our happiness, whether it's in our health, whether it's in our material wealth, or whether it's in our overall emotional well-being. Because let's face it, everything starts in the mind. And I know that many people have heard that, and many people, might agree with that concept, but many people don't understand the full aspect of what their mind is. They're under the influence that their dominant thoughts that control the world and control their life, and are basically the dominant force in controlling their life, are the thoughts that they're aware of, their thoughts that they're focusing on, and the thoughts that are, over majority of the time, the ones that they're aware of in their conscious awareness. And that's a big misnomer. It's a big mistake. And it's important to realize that the dominant thoughts a person has are not the thoughts in your head. They're not the thoughts you're aware of. They're not the thoughts that you're thinking right now. Your dominant thoughts are the sum total of the information stored throughout the crevices of your body that will show up as body feelings in certain situations. And these are the ones that are your dominant force. And they are the ones that manage things like many disease processes and autoimmune conditions and chronic conditions. They're the ones responsible for self sabotaging behavior. They're the ones responsible for the problems in relationships, the problems with money, the problems with growth, and changing yourself, changing the life, changing the trajectory of yourself, because these dominant thoughts are vibrational frequencies throughout the crevices of the body, and they will, like a magnet, draw into your life, draw into your experience things that are in resonance with these dominant thoughts, within these resonance frequencies, without your permission, without your consent, without you having any awareness of it. And that's why no matter what happens on the outside world, everything kind of tends back to balance to those dominant frequencies. This happens in relationships. This is why some people can date the same person with a different face. They're dating the same pattern, the same characteristics, the same attributes and qualities in the people are very similar, even if the people are completely different looking, maybe have a different skin color, from different background, maybe even a different religious belief system. But overall, these people have a sum total of resonant frequencies within that same person. And ultimately, what happens is you're dating the same person. And let's say that suddenly you shift to somebody completely different. You change. Now you're dating somebody that maybe is a, I'll just say with quotes in my hands, an upgrade over the usual. And suddenly you feel, wow, I'm dating this person. There's something deep inside of you that senses they're not a match, that senses that, this may be too good to be true, whatever else it is. And sure enough, in a very brief period of time, that relationship is sabotaged, and you go back to dating somebody on that same level that you were before this person came into your life. And that's a simple principle, that we can never outperform what's in harmony with those resonant dominant thoughts that our body is giving off, like a submarine pinging out sonar. That's what our bodies are constantly doing over and over and over. And I mentioned this with relationships. It happens the same way with wealth, material wealth. That's why a person can inherit a large amount of money, either through some relative, some loved one dying, or they can win the lottery. But if they have that same resonant frequency going off saying, I don't deserve this, I don't deserve X, I don't deserve Y, the money is going to feel uncomfortable to them at some level, and they're going to part with it very quickly. And oftentimes, this is why you can see people that have won the lottery, and within 3 to 5 years, they're completely broke, completely bankrupt. And oftentimes, the person may even commit suicide because of uh, how devastating it has at what has formed from their experience with this money. And many people on the outside will look at this and say, oh, they should have managed it better. They should have been smart. They should have made better choices. And was this something the person chose? Absolutely not. It was their resonant, dominant thoughts that were in charge of this. And those are the things that we want to begin to understand, because if you're not aware of it, if you can't name it, if you can't observe this going on in yourself, you're essentially denying it. And when you deny something, nothing changes. And that's really what it comes down to. Operating from this understanding is how we operate what's called psychosomatic medicine, mind body medicine. And this happens because usually a significant amount of our clients and patients have come to us and they've tried every single thing else. And oftentimes they come to us as a last resort. I don't know how many times a week I have a patient come to me and they say, literally, I'm their 19th doctor they've seen, and they've seen every kind of functional medicine path, every kind of functional medicine, naturopathic doctor, internist, what have you. And it's just more of kind of the same thing. We're going to test, we're going to do some muscle testing, we're going to do some um, lab work, we're going to check the terrain of your body, we're going to do all these different things. And they're, working on the outside of the person. It's like a battle on the outside, while the inside dominant thoughts, dominant force going on has no harmonic frequency or resonance with this healthy outside change. And therefore the person's sabotages their results. There's often like a lot of backslides, and the symptoms, either they are very short-term improve or they don't improve at all. And so when they come to us, one of the first things I discuss with people is um, what I would call the traits and attributes of chronically ill people. And this includes personality types that are strongly, this is not even controversial, strongly associated with chronic illness. And those people, um, you know, have, they have some kind of events in their life to where they have something happened in their life to where it gives them the impression that they are trying to compete for some kind of emotional acceptance, because they didn't, as a child, get that. They didn't have a need met. They oftentimes were, um, under the circumstance, they weren't lovable for who they were. So they become very lovable as people. They become super nice, trying to do favors for everyone else, trying to take on too much, trying to take on way too many roles. And they have an automatic concern for the emotional needs of everyone else around them, friends, peers, colleagues, family, and they completely disregard their own emotional needs. This is a really common occurrence in people that have um, malignancies and autoimmune conditions. They just are really, really good, super nice, excessively nice people that don't rock the boat. They don't they don't speak their true self. They don't have boundaries. If you watch them often enough, they're the people that just never say no. They'll continually take on more and more tasks, um, all for the attempt to win the affection of others. And oftentimes they're doing it in a inauthentic way. They're not doing it consciously, but it's a personality. And these personalities and these people can, feel very responsible for how other people, they feel very responsible for how other people's experiences are. They feel like they cannot disappoint anyone. They feel like they're responsible for how other people feel on every level. And it's almost like a hyper reactive and a hyper reaction. And what they're ultimately doing when they're feeling so responsible for how other people are their experiences themselves is they're repressing themselves at a very deep level. They're they're not speaking their true self. And when people are repressing that energy within themselves, compulsively not being real, but being fake just so other people like them. Okay. Um, that causes a lot of tension, a lot of turmoil and stress deep inside that person. And when that's going on over time, this becomes a border. This becomes an absolute um, non-negotiable characteristic of people that will develop some kind of symptoms. First off, they're pretty mild, cold, maybe a migraine, some kind of joint pain. And as this continues to go on and this personality still proliferates and the stress and the conflict within that person grows, these symptoms start to get stronger and stronger and stronger until they become quite serious. And it's not the symptoms that are the problem. They've manifested this because of the way that they are viewing life, viewing themselves, and having this hyper responsibility based on a deep-seated belief that they must justify their own self. They must justify themselves as a person by giving and by doing on a very excessive manner. And this is again a very strong uh, correlated characteristic of people that have chronic illness. And it's many times the ones that can't say no when they really should say no. And the reason they can't say no is because they feel at a very deep unconscious level that they have to be good to deserve earning love from others. They have to feel good to even feel lovable. And if they say no, if they feel like they have a boundary control, they say no to someone around them, they feel very guilty. They feel very like they're suddenly not lovable. And why would a person do that? It's because they learned at an early age that um, if they learned at a very early age that they weren't fully acceptable for who they were. Now, I see this all the time in clients and patients that are unresponsive to supplements and organic food, and they're drinking the best water, all these different things. And whenever they come to me and I share this with them, they have tremendous difficulty expressing their emotions because in childhood they weren't allowed to, and they compensated by suppressing those feelings. Um, just one example of how this works, I had a woman come to me once named Karen, and whenever she was working with me, um, she had rheumatoid arthritis, and whenever she's sitting there talking with me through Zoom, her hands hurt quite bad. She had done all the functional medicine routine, was taking a briefcase of supplements, and I had her simply find her the pain in her hand, and I had her kind of squeeze her own hand until she could really feel that pain. And when she felt that pain, I just told her this: there's a feeling behind this pain, a feeling where this originates, a feeling where you first learned this. Take us back to the scene, the key event. It has everything to do with this. And when we did, she was suddenly 3 years old, describing the situation she was in. She was in a room and she had suddenly, um, seen in this room, the people in front of her were her parents. Her mom and dad were there. And what this little 3-year-old observed in this moment, what she learned, regardless of what was going on, this is what this little 3-year-old girl learned, was that her parents were fully engulfed in her newborn baby sister. So the mom and dad were completely consumed with the newborn sister and almost ignoring this little 3-year-old girl. And it was through various SSEs, or secondary satellite memories, is what I call them, satellite memories we had visited. It was confirmed that other events had compounded on this and taught this little girl that she was no longer lovable because her little sister was, this the horde of attention for the folks. The folks were, her parents were completely celebrating this little newborn in a way that made this little 3-year-old girl realize that she wasn't lovable for who she was. And as a result of this, she became an adult who felt responsible for how other people feel and what they must experience, because she was attempting to try to earn that love that she wasn't receiving as a 3-year-old. She felt that she cannot disappoint anyone. So this made her take on multiple tasks that were oftentimes very taxing to her body. And it made her feel like she's not worthy unless she's doing something to earn that love. And this, of course, will start to show up as kind of a criticism, as a self betrayal, like not being good enough. And when that happens, criticism will oftentimes show up as joint pain, including rheumatoid arthritis. So once we worked on that specific scene, um, where she first learned that she wasn't lovable because her 3-year-old sister was much more appealing to the parents, once we changed that scene for her, um, right away, the joint pain slowed down, the joint pain started to cease, and she couldn't bring it back after our session. No, that's good to have pain disappear in joints, but what's an indicator of that person being healed, that person reconnecting to wholeness, to where that illness will never come back. It'll basically continue to heal, is how she behaves afterwards. And in a follow-up session, Karen had told me that she was, she spoke her mind more. She was very surprised at how quickly she was able to say no to people, when compulsively yes was always what would come out of her mouth. She suddenly was like, hey, that's on them. If something's wrong and they're upset, that's not my fault. I'm doing the best I can, and that's plenty good enough. Now that's a completely different attitude versus having, I have to say yes to be lovable. No matter what I do, it's never good enough. And I'm not worthy unless I'm doing something useful. So the shifting in that personality. And additionally, this is really important. Whenever I asked her, how does it feel to um, not feel responsible for how other people feel? How does it feel to say no to these people when you've always said yes to them? And her immediate answer was relief, relief, relaxed, freeing. Those are the terms that I often hear from people that go through psychosomatic work with me when we regress to cause. And I ask them how they feel when they're suddenly able to hold a boundary, suddenly able to say no when they should say no, freeing, relaxed. Okay. And that freeing, that relaxed, is a complete contrast to the conflict and tension that's going on deep inside of them, that's responsible for creating that illness in the first place. And you can get all the acupuncture you want. You can get all the best bioenergetic synchronization technique. That's what I did for years. Quantum integration, different kinds of frequencies, red light therapies, all these different things. And I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm not bashing them. They're all good modalities, but none of them affect the mental plane as necessary for the personality transformation. So the person doesn't shift out of that personality having those traits that created the chronic illness in the first place. So those are the things that I look for when I work with people immediately, to see how things have shifted. Another case, working with a young girl, mid-20s, and she had these same traits of chronic illness. She had severe digestive problems. Okay. Again, it's their experiences she learned when she was little. And after we did this regression to cause work, we changed her perceptions that related to not being loved, not being good enough, being ignored, things like that, that made her suddenly feel responsible for how other people feel. Here she is, mid-20s, and she's dating the wrong guys, guys who she would meet on social media, and they would meet up maybe at a park or a bar or a club or something like that. And the guys would suddenly start kind of blowing her off, saying, hey, I'll make plans with you tomorrow. And despite seeing them on social media and them liking some of her posts that day, not reaching out to her, not following through on the plans to meet with her, but eventually writing to her late at night, emailing her or messaging her on Facebook or something like that, and saying, "Oh yeah, let's meet tomorrow. Let's meet tomorrow." And normally, this 20-year-old girl would clear her entire schedule and say, "Yeah, yeah, okay, we'll meet tomorrow. We'll meet tomorrow," despite the fact that she was blown off. And whenever we worked on her healing her trauma, bringing her back to wholeness, suddenly, instinctively, deep down, without her even having to think about it, she's suddenly saying no. So in this case, when this gentleman said, "Hey, let's clear your schedule tomorrow and we can meet up," suddenly she's going, "No, I'm not going to clear my schedule. You obviously didn't reach out today when we had plans, even though you were watching me on social media and whatnot, liking some of my posts, but you just kind of felt the need to blow me off. And now you're reaching out late at night saying, 'Hey, let's meet tomorrow instead of today. Let's meet tomorrow.'" And suddenly she's saying, "No, no, I wasn't good enough for you to reach out today and meet me today. And now suddenly at nighttime, you want to reach out." Um, so that's what I mean by boundary control. That's what I mean by having to be good to deserve being loved. If I say no, I'm not lovable. Being responsible for how other people feel and what they experience, and having this deep down personality of I must not disappoint anyone, that creates turmoil, and in this case, causes severe digestive problems. Once she was able to say no, once she was able to hold her boundaries, by the way, her digestive illness completely cleared up. And this was after seeing, lots of different functional medicine doctors, even doing sessions of other trauma healing related to things like EFT and EMDR. But again, in my opinion, EFT, emotional freedom technique, EMDR, can be helpful for some, but oftentimes they're surface level trauma work because you're not getting to the root that happened between 0 to 5. So if you work on surface level stuff, if you work on the secondary events, but ignore the seed planting, those callings in the subconscious mind will show up again, and they'll show up as reoccurring symptoms. And these people end up oftentimes sitting across from me after they've done other things. And whenever we go back to the root, they heal, and they heal permanently. And this isn't some egotistical, I'm not saying this from an egotistical standpoint. I'm saying this from, there's a difference between what works and what doesn't. And I'm all about promoting what works. And one of my mantras often is, hey, if somebody can show me something, a way to remove self-mutilation or a way to shift the personalities in these people that have chronic illness as fast, as effective, and as permanently as the stuff I'm doing, I will gladly drop it like a hot rock and become a student of that person. I'll become a student. I'll be there. I mean, sometimes I'm working too hard at this stuff. But until then, I'm usually the one that's catching the things that other people have missed. And that's just kind of a routine basis for this. So just keep that in mind if you're listening to this and you find yourself having tremendous difficulty in expressing certain emotions and saying no when people ask them to do things. They compulsively say yes because there's a deep down concern for how other people feel. That stress that is created, that significant amount of conflict, happens over time. That pressure begins to build, symptoms start to show up, and this is what will get attention. This is what will the doctors pay attention to. And when this is happening and going on, you best bet, despite what the doctor does, I don't care if it's a cortisone shot, if it's autoimmune management, if it's supplements, if it's parasite cleanses, if it's detoxing, if it's heavy metal, that doesn't change the person's personality. They're going to continue to say yes when they should say no. That pressure continues to build up and build up and build up, and the symptoms will return like clockwork. This is absolutely unquestionable, scientifically repeatable. You cannot separate the mind from the body. So whatever happens emotionally, or is not allowed to happen will always have a direct impact on the person's physiology. You have to go back and change that early template of what happened to them for the person to start having boundaries, for them to develop a new personality, one that's not in resonant harmony with the one that created the illness in the first place. It has to happen that way.